Oh, I've been replaced. Great.
You go home and watch it and find out what you asked.
We figured that out. A quorum from home.
Yeah, right.
Good.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks, 4-6.
You're right on the truck.
I'm good. Yeah.
I just sit here for the home gate.
Right.
I said this one so I could hear everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we get going? So the meeting agenda tonight, we have 4 items, but first, Scott Lord is our new member. Welcome.
Scott, for joining. Thank you. We need all the help we can get.
Good.
Hopefully we won't scare you away tonight. So we have 4 items, and I thought what we'd do is we'd go through very quick old business. If there's any hangups there, we'll just move past it so we can get to the meat of the meeting. But review and approve the minutes. I added a chair search update, a quick update there, harbor master's report, and then the allocation and assignment of mooring sites. So anybody have anything else they want to add?
Need to approve the minutes.
That's the first item. Need a motion to approve if
We'll
people.
make a motion to approve the minutes. Last one.
Okay,
Seconded.
all right. Second item is the chair search update. Jacob and I had a brief conversation and his dance card's pretty full right now. So unfortunately, he's unable to take the chair position right now, so we're back to where we were. Jake?
Yeah, just what I want to say, that came after long discussions both internally with my family, and about what I want to achieve and how much time I have on my plate. That being said, I think that role, what I can offer to anybody sitting in the chair position, I can offer that from this position as a member, and intend to do that going forward.
3 more years will fly by, Ben.
So we're back to the same position when I have parole in 3 months.
So if nobody volunteers, that means we'll have to disband, right?
No.
No, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think that's a topic for a meeting down the road.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you have anything that you need the group for that we should put at the end of the meeting in terms of your report or an update of what's going on?
Just out of the float to going in tomorrow.
Okay, great. Okay, so this evening we're here to talk about allocation and assignment of mooring sites. Brandon asked us to put this on the agenda, and it's really an opportunity to have a conversation about the current process of allocating, what is and will become even more scarce resource. It's a tricky balance of how you allocate those. And Tenants Harbor Boatyard, welcome. There were some questions during the allocation process, and I think it's afforded us an opportunity, really an excellent opportunity to look at the process of how we do this and to really think going forward, how do we want to do this? How do we want to meet growth in the town? How do we juggle all the 8 different categories of people who actually get to have a mooring in town? So what we'll do is open it up initially to public comment. So if you guys want to make some comment, and then we'll come back to the group and have a conversation that you're welcome, obviously, to participate in.
Anything? All right, can we use Great. I am not probably the most familiar face around here. I don't recognize very many of you. I know Brandon, Bill, I know Ryan. My name is Justin Ward. I'm currently the boatyard manager down in Tenants Harbor Boatyard. Been there for about a year now, and working with Brendan, a small group of individuals from in and around the area, and more of the Mid-Coast region. And we are actively in the harbor. You guys are all probably very familiar with Tenants Harbor Boatyard. Some of you maybe more than even myself. So we're here to discuss exactly what Bill just had touched on, was the assignment of mooring rights and locations, which is in the ordinance. 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet with Ryan and Brandon here at the town office, which I'm thankful you guys took the time out of your day to do that. And the goal from our side is to really try and find a way forward, because when we read ordinances and they are, you know, they feel very rigid. And sometimes in our opinion, they can also be slightly outdated. So like in reading the one specific avenue that I'm after kind of two topics here. The first one is to encourage a review of the ordinance on one specific section, and the second is how to approach offerings of available moorings within tenants harbor. So the first pointer is specifically sections 110 and 111. 110 subsection 2 part B references a maximum of 5 moorings for commercial entities and waterfront services for service or rental moorings per building. We currently have 15, 3 times the amount in the ordinance. I know of other entities between Port 5, St. George proper that also have more than the 5. Some have more than us, some have less than us. But obviously with having 3 times the amount of what the ordinance states, it might be time to just check in, revisit it, and see if there is a more appropriate number for moving forward. Just one of the things that jumps out at me. We would like to have more capacity throughout the busiest parts of our season. We have year-round clientele, we have seasonal clientele. And we swell from possibly needing, upwards of, New York Yacht Club shows up, 50 moorings, but we can't accommodate them. And that's not what we're after. We're not after having more moorings than anybody else in the harbor. Just being able to kind of build or work within, the town ordinances to accommodate what we currently offer and then expand some more, because our expenses continually climb. And, with just a basic footprint, we can't continue to offer more without a little bit more growth around that. And my second point is just how the town approaches offering available moorings. When a mooring comes available, we've had a couple of interactions, and we've discussed this with Brandon and Ryan on, how we as Tenants Harbor are able to acquire additional moorings, right? We do have 15, it's a big number, I get it. And our goal is not to drive out any other commercial entities. We're willing to take spaces in some of the non-desirable parts of Tenants Harbor, maybe the ones that are further out, the ones that have been sitting unused or some for over a year or 2 years. But also with that, if we can start to recycle moorings that haven't been used, we start to clean up the waitlist as St. George, right? There's 14 people ahead of us. If there's moorings that are being unused for an extended period of time, at what point do they get recycled back into the waitlist to advance more people through that more rapidly? And the waitlist doesn't continue to grow and grow and grow. So we've had some experiences where we were denied access to moorings when clients approached us to purchase them. We've learned that the proper channel is to encourage them to come to the town and talk, with the harbor master, and encourage them and say, hey, Ryan usually has a wait list. He can refer to that. He can hopefully pin you with somebody who will work for your space, and hopefully they'll purchase the mooring from you. And so as of June of last year, we put ourselves on the wait list. We had a mooring come up a couple months ago. One of our clients reached out and asked us to help them broker it. That was the road I took. I said, hey, go to the town, tell them you're all done with your mooring. Hopefully they'll find somebody that can take your space. It's my understanding a week later, after speaking with that client again, that the mooring list had been gone through and everybody was contacted and nobody was interested. Being as though we were on the wait list last June, we were also not contacted in that process, right? So following the ordinance, we're on the wait list and we're waiting, and it's an undesirable mooring in the outer harbor and we're not contacted. So how do we work towards crafting when we will be allowed to have a mooring? When can we acquire another one? Does it sit for 6 months to see if another resident comes up? does it sit for 6 months or 3 months for somebody ahead of us on the wait list who said no originally to come back and say I might be interested? I guess I'm just trying to, we're really trying to understand at what point in knowing that we're happy to take unwanted, unused, off the grid sections of the harbor. When do we get the opportunity to have access to these moorings that may become available? We've also discussed with Ryan, he was talking about adding more moorings into the outer harbor section to accommodate some other folks. It sounded like there might be 15 coming in, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan.
It's just spots that could
Spots that
possibly.
could possibly, I don't wanna misspeak there. Possibly 15 more moorings. If they go forward, will we be allowed to have access to those being the 15th person on the wait list? And if not, what can we do to acquire other moorings, or are we just completely cut off at this point? So I'm completely open.
Yeah, so I can do that on that, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think so. I'm Brendan Chase. I've worked in the harbor for close to 20 years now, working for Jamie Wyeth. Sort of overseeing the boatyard and pretty familiar with the harbor for being in there that long. And I just want to kind of speak to that aspect a little bit. And so, kind of questioning what, I had a great conversation with Brandon and Brian the other day. And so one of the questions brought up was what does Dennis Harbor look like? What is the vision of the harbor committee? What is the vision of the townsfolk? What are we trying to do? And, so Jamie has essentially subsidized Tennant's Harbor Boatyard for a number of years because of his passion for the community, for, wanting to bring traffic here and encourage more people to come to the community. I think Tennant's Harbor Boatyard as an entity encourages other people to do that, to come here, who then spend money at the Tennant's Harbor General Store, who then go to the East Wind Inn or to the Happy Clam. I think I would imagine that we want more clients to come to the harbor. And so to that end, again, Jamie has subsidized the boatyard. And so, what we're looking for, I spoke to Brandon about this idea of, sort of peak capacity with what we're looking for a number of moorings. And so, 25 moorings would be our peak capacity. That's not to say we've used 25 moorings every day of the summer season, but, we've had to turn away some yacht clubs, in the past number of years because we just can't accommodate them. And so if we have a certain number of moorings, then we can reach that, or accommodate those peak capacities, a few times a year. And so, I guess the point is having extra moorings isn't going to make or break the boatyard, but what we are trying to do is increase some revenue. And again, try to bridge the gap of losing money for the past 10 years with the boatyard. I think Jamie's a little bit tired of subsidizing it, to the extent that he is. And so we're just trying to grow the boatyard. And so we're trying to meet a demand that people have come to us and said, hey, do you have moorings? Can you help us out? And at this point, we're saying no. The proper channel is to go through the town. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to go in and buy up Tennant's Harbor. We're trying to meet a demand. We're trying to, at least break even at the boatyard. I think if you all recognize what Tennant's Harbor means to the harbor, I think you'd all recognize that if it's closed down, it would be a pretty significant loss to the harbor. We're pretty generous with the lobstermen, with residents to come down and launch their boats, to have access, to walk around. And so this is, anyway, just trying to speak of what we're trying to do here. And I think Justin's got some, great suggestions, and done the research on what, I guess the ordinance or the main harbor, what was the aspect of some of the main state ordinances of what we're trying to do with the harbors. And I think what we are trying to do is fit in, to growth and commerce within the harbor.
Great.
So I guess looking for some clarity on what the process is. We've struggled, we've had some frustrations on what that is. So I think, is it time to update? What is the number? How does that move forward? Can we be a part of that discussion?
So as I mentioned, it's a perfect example of how things are trying to grow and what needs to happen in town and a good time to look at the ordinances. I don't know, Brandon, if you have anything you want to start with or?
Yeah, I mean, typically ordinances are black and white. This one builds in discretion of the harbor master, which I think is a good thing. Ryan has his finger on the pulse of the harbors better than a lot of folks do. I think it's helpful if Ryan has some sort of direction from this committee as to what the goals of the harbors are. Ideally, the town would have a harbor management plan that's in our sort of short to long-term goals. We just launched a new comp plan and it mentions developing a harbor management plan. We already have some other plans that are currently being developed between resilience and open space. And so my guess is that starting a harbor management plan wouldn't happen for at least another year at the earliest. And so in the meantime, it would just be helpful to have this group's input on what really the nature of the harbors should be, and how we manage, a finite resource. And so, some of the questions that I had, I think have already been touched on, like how do we navigate this cap that is listed in the ordinance? And again, the ordinance was written when Dave Szymanska started. And so the harbors were in a different place then than they are now. And what are sort of the guardrails for Ryan's discretion so that he knows he can make decisions confidently with this group's backing, knowing that you all are advisory to the town, you're brought on for your expertise. So I think that's really it, and may have more discussion.
Yeah, let's open it up and start with, how do people feel about this hard number of 5? I mean, it's obviously over the course of time, it's morphed because you have 15, others have, or 13, or however many you have. How do people feel about keeping a rigid number like 5 in the ordinance? Does that make sense? Should we be more flexible? And the hard part here is that word discretion, because it loads all of the responsibility onto the harbor master to make these decisions. So how do you go?
Does anybody think he shouldn't have that discretion?
That was one of our questions. I mean, it is, in theory, sounds great, having that discretion, because Ryan does have a finger on the pulse, but we experienced, something that wasn't great. And so I worry how that discretion is used, I guess. And so, Bill, when you speak to some rigidity around the discretion, I think that's important, an important thing to discuss of how that discretion is doled out.
Yeah, I don't think that we should remove Ryan's discretion. It's what allowed Tenants Harbor Boatyard to get up to 15 moorings. Otherwise, you all would be stuck at 5. But I do think we haven't had a conversation at the town level about what is the direction that our harbors are heading in? What are the goals that we're trying to support and achieve? And so outlining some of that, I think, will be important.
Right, and I don't think that any, go ahead, yeah.
I believe that I was around, we had a business long before they even dreamed about it, okay? I can give you a whole backlog of what's going on since 1970, okay? I believe 5, there was a reason 5 came in, because people were getting pissed off because they thought the cod end had too many moorings, okay? That was the whole crux of that. Okay, they got 15 now. Okay, they're already over the limit, according to our thing. They've been allowed to have it. Nobody's screeching about it. I think because they think they gotta have more. I mean, we had yacht clubs come in pale comparison to what they've had. Okay, so I that isn't even an issue. I have some issues with, I don't think it should be changed. I don't think the harbor master should not be taken out of having the discretion because he's there, he's looking at it. He's seeing it from not only my point of view, if I'm talking to him, but he's talking to X amount of people that I don't even know of, okay? And you got. I've been in, I can't even tell you how many harbors I've been seaweeding out of. Okay, Camden's one. You're on a waiting list till probably your grandson will get on it, okay? It doesn't, so that's just the way it is. You got so much, you only get a finite amount of room. And some of these people aren't gonna take a mooring out there because they don't wanna go that far. But on the other hand, they got moorings right now when I'm towing up weed bags coming in through from Mouse Island and Gull Rock there, they're right in the way. How many more moorings do they want? So you can wrap weed bags around it. They're gonna keep plunking more moorings out there. Okay, so that's a personal issue with me, that particular issue. I don't believe this town needs to much tweak into that because there was a lot of thought put into it and I haven't seen anywhere near the boat traffic that was here during the heyday of the Cod End, not even close. And Lieutenant's Harbor Boatyard was there as a boatyard, and we sent piles of work down to George and Sonny and them previous to that. So I guess I could be biased, I could be any way it is, but you look at it from a financial point, if they add 20 more moorings, do they think that's gonna stop the bleeding? From Jamie?
I think, so, I agree, I was trying to, I messed up my point, or didn't articulate it well enough as far as. Another 5 moorings isn't going to make or break, the boatyard. And I think what we're trying to do is shift from, that aspect of, George Emery obviously owned it for years, and it's a completely different entity now. And so we're trying to make it a little more of a destination, to your point of how Cod End included many yacht clubs from years ago. That's what Jamie has mentioned to me many times. He's like, this heyday, he's like, I remember yacht clubs coming in and out forever. And which is the reason why when you guys closed down a number of years ago and didn't offer public fuel anymore, Jamie subsidized our fuel tank down there to the tune of $100,000 out of pocket, because he was worried that there would be no boat traffic in the harbor. And so we are in the process of shifting, that, our business. And so, yes, 5 more moorings won't make a break. But what we're trying to do is offer year-round employment to Justin, so some of these things offset the fixed costs of our business, which then will allow, Justin more time to, make some money elsewhere within the business. And so, paying those fixed costs does make a difference year round.
So. You got fixed costs, we're getting into the weeds here.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually turn us away from the discussion about the business model.
Yeah.
Because that's not really what we're talking about.
I don't want
We
to
are-
get into the weeds.
We are always gonna press up against, we're gonna have more need than we have resource. That's really what we're talking about here. Because through more people moving to town, it's happening. There's gonna be more recreational boaters who want moorings. That's gonna happen. The harbor may go in a more commercial route. It may go into a more recreational route, but we're always gonna be pressed up against less moorings than we need. And so the ordinance is written as a schema to give us an opportunity to act against it. So that's really what we're talking about. How do we make sure that your business grows? Maybe we wouldn't be able to give you 25 moorings tomorrow, but is there a way that we can think about how we parse out and allocate in a different way than we do now? Or do we stick strictly to what we have currently written? But the business end of how the business runs, that loss is your problem.
Sure, no,
I'm joking.
I'm speaking, no, but I'm speaking to what we're trying to do.
I
Yes,
understand.
So like that's part of our aim towards gaining some more.
Yeah. Exactly.
When Port Clyde General Store got X amount of moorings, but does anybody know how they got them, because there's some little thing that Victor Cole figured out in there that every man, woman, and child in Port Clyde, whatever, has got a right to mooring. So that's how he piled in all those moorings underneath a bunch of different names, okay? Port Clyde General Store never had 17 or 20 moorings. That all happened under Victor Cole because there was a big chew going on about it, okay? And there was a little thing written in one of their things down there that's how he got that through, okay? So that's why they have those amount of moorings, because of that deal. You know, we had 5 moorings to the cot end itself, and then me and my brothers had moorings that we paid rental fee on, that the cot end would rent those other 5, so we had 10 moorings that were available to be used in the summertime, you know, and then that's how that worked. And I still remember years ago, you know, people were howling about, geez, they got all these moorings. So this is what drove what you're looking at right here, okay? And the other issue that we've talked about, sat here and talked about, we did 2 times ago, I missed the last meeting. You're already having an issue down on the town landing because the people are having a fit about parking. So, you know, where you gonna go with all that?
Well, and I will, to the question about us putting more moorings in, I'd be happy to have a conversation about what that looks like. But I'm also, I guess my main point getting was the moorings that exist currently, and when they become available, when do we get the opportunity to possibly acquire more, right? They're already in place. It's been expressed that the whole wait list has been contacted and nobody is interested, and we're on it. And it's been an undesirable part of the harbor, but we're interested in it. But we're still being restricted from acquiring and stewarding that mooring. So it's not adding an additional one, it's just putting one into service from the boatyard standpoint. And then, you know, yeah, I guess I just wanted to clarify that, because we're not trying to drop 10 more tomorrow randomly in the harbor. These are moorings that are already in place.
I do think that's an important and tangible first question for the committee to consider, right? Is it that you want to hold the cap so firmly that you're comfortable having unused moorings in the harbor? Is it that you want to hold the cap a bit firmly, but and leave it open for a full season to see if anybody moves in and takes it, and if at the end of the season, if it's open, then you'll open it up to people that are on the waiting list that are already above the cap. These types of pieces for the moorings that are in already, I think is a tangible piece for the committee to address.
Scott, so the way I feel about this as it's written is that these guidelines were put into place so that it protects everybody's right to access them. So if Tenants Harbor Boatyard was somehow grandfathered into having 15 at this point, you negotiate that by putting yourself on a wait list for moorings that you know you wouldn't be eligible for according to the ordinances. And I understand your thought in saying that, well, we would be taking moorings that wouldn't be wanted by anybody else because people on that wait list were contacted. But I also, from the other side, would like to think that those moorings or those spaces would be available in the future, not bought up and then held out of reach for anybody else in the future that would move to town or try and stay in town that don't have moorings now, but maybe would want to in the future. And then there is no moorings, you know? So yeah, I agree. I think maybe it's something we need to look at the way that the wait list is specified maybe. But I have no problem keeping it at the discretion of the harbor master, and I feel, you know, if the moorings are at 5, then there's probably a reason for that.
But this is directed to Ryan, because I've kind of lost touch with some of it, but what is there? Any of the moorings out there that are quote, unused or not, I mean, I'm assuming that those people are. Are still paying,
Yeah.
so, I mean. So there you go, right there, they're still paying, so I'm assuming that they want that spot.
Right.
I don't, I mean, I can't make that judgment, I can't speak for anybody on that deal, you know, they may be 1, 2, 3 years waiting for a particular boat to come, I don't know.
Yeah.
But. So if it's just been abandoned, then to me, that's a whole nother.
Yeah.
Whole nother, you know, can of worms.
So these are folks that are looking to get rid of them. They have paid for this year or last year, and they have sold their boat, and they typically approach us because of our relationship with a lot of people in the harbor and say, hey, we've got this mooring that we don't want to use anymore. Would you like to buy it? And, you know, we say, yes, we would love to, but the proper channel, as we learned last year, is to go through Ryan. And so that's what we've directed people to do.
So the Lee Tale was referencing sunken moorings in the harbor. Meaning if those, even if they're not being used, if they're being paid up on, then somebody should retain that mooring, correct?
Well, that's what I was wondering,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, that's. I just want.
It's like Arts Lobster, so they don't have to pay the cost of the wear and chain. They might have, I don't know the number off without talking to them. Okay, so let's say 6. That they just are not, it's on bottom, so that way they're not wearing the chain in.
Yeah.
But they pay on those.
They pay on them.
They're perfectly current.
Yeah,
They just are not currently being used.
They're just kind
Because-
of holding the spot.
Because probably at one day, they did have 12 fishermen,
Yeah, we
Oh,
know.
yeah.
and it fluctuates back and forth.
Well, back to your point, right? Like if there are moorings that are some, right?
Right.
And there are people maybe in the future that want moorings or have them accessible. Is there some consideration to a timeline? Like if it is sunk for a year while you're shopping for a boat, or maybe the lobster industry increases and they bring on more fishermen. Great, but is there a limit to how long it can be sunk for? Because what is the threshold for getting recycled? Is it, I'm just throwing out numbers and then trying to generate conversation and thought around it.
I think what we need to really define is the difference between current paid moorings, whether they're being used and sunk or just sunk, or abandoned moorings that are no longer being currently, that's, I think, a big difference. Because a mooring that's being paid for that isn't being currently used is no different than, say, you buying a piece of land and not building a house on it right now. But nobody should be able to force you to do it just so that you can have it, right? So if you have that mooring, it's been approved and it's been there, then as long as you're current on it, you should be able to maintain currency and keep it. But if there are abandoned moorings, I think that's a completely different.
So let's just take an example, because what we're talking about is maintaining capacity for the future. So the discretion piece for us is, do we want growth and do we want to save some spots? So let's just make up an example. A mooring comes open, it's in the harbor, and Ryan, you go through the list, you get to the bottom of the list. There's somebody in the middle that says, I want a mooring, but I don't want that spot. And now it sits there and nobody wants it. I want to open it up to the committee. How should we handle it?
I mean, I guess if I can speak again, it would be along those same lines that if you don't fit into the ordinance as it is by wanting more than what you already are allowed to have, then that spot should stay on the list for however long until somebody who does qualify under these ordinances would want that. And I think that maintains us as a town being able to move much further into the future with available spots than just divvying up all the real estate we have right now, and then there's nothing left. That's my fear, I guess. I mean, if we could put more moorings out there, we could have moorings all the way out to Southern Island if you wanted them, but is that good for the town? And I don't feel it is.
Anybody else?
Well, I think the ordinance provides for that now. If there's an unused mooring and no one on the 15 wait list wants it, then it's up to Ryan to dispose of that mooring or to keep them. i.e., let tenants have a boatyard, rent it or not. That's where the discretion comes in. That's what the ordinance provides for.
That's exactly right. Ryan can make the decision to either leave that mooring unused and wait until somebody wants it, or that's how you guys or others have got to 15, because they've gone past the 5 and that became available, and there was discretion by the harbor master to say, sure, here you go, you can take that one. But when we think about holding on to capacity, then each time that happens, then we say no, because we're gonna wait to go through the list. I mean, I'm just trying to get people to think through. These situations are gonna come up all the time. And so it's our duty to sort of recommend should we just stick to the ordinance? And if that's the case, then nothing changes. Right?
I guess another point of the capacity, it was mentioned earlier about there's no parking at the town landing. So if these moorings are being held for a future resident that lives there and wants a mooring, where are they going to be parking? Right? If parking is already an issue, the one thing Tennis Harbor does offer is parking for our clients. For our clients that we offer the dinghy stuff, so that alleviates stress on the town landing dinghies. It alleviates parking anywhere else in downtown because we have a large enough space to accommodate these folks. And also with our stewardship of the moorings currently, we do have folks that are trying on the boating experience, right? Where they will buy a boat and they think they want to get into boating, and then they go out on their first trip. We rent them a mooring for the summer and they scare the hell out of themselves, right? And they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then if they get the mooring through the town, maybe it gets recycled and goes away quickly. Other times they're stuck holding the bag and have to maintain mooring for a couple of years, and it drops to the bottom, and now we're back into the holding pattern. So just more food for thought there. Like, I'm obviously just representing the boatyard, but we do alleviate parking problems and kidney problems. We do accommodate at least 10 commercial fishermen right now with their dinghies year round.
Right, so Tennis Harbor Boatyard, currently, you don't have to rent a mooring. You can rent a slip space for your dinghy as a commercial fisherman, and you get a parking spot. And so it seems like that already is alleviating the public issue.
Right, I mean, I'm just saying, if we were afforded the opportunity to acquire more, right? So if we ended up with one more, if it was in the town's hands and it goes to a new resident, right? The new resident is gonna need to find a place to park at the town landing, where I'm assuming they would be keeping their dinghy to access their mooring if they don't have a water property. So if Tennis Harbor were to have the mooring, we have the parking, it alleviates the stress of the landing. We have the dinghy space, alleviates the town landing, and somebody's planning on boating for a season. Or maybe they're committed to owning a boat or that own multiple boats. They've always wanted a mooring utensil. And they don't want to deal with the maintenance, the seasonal stuff that comes along with the re-registering it every year. There's a convenience in it by having us take care of all the heavy lifting, and they show up and their boat's on their mooring, their dinghy's on the dock, they can park in our lot and off they go. So that's just my advice there.
Yep. I don't think the town should lose control of the moorings.
So one question I have going off that, and I hesitate to pose it, is what it could do to Ryan, but is there any value in, let's say that we were able to identify that there's 15 more realistic spots in the harbor for moorings? Is there any value in the town placing and owning moorings in the harbor that could then be rented on an annual basis? And so that way it maintains the flexibility. And so if Ryan didn't have anybody interested for a season, the Tennis Harbor Boatyard could rent 10 more moorings because nobody wants them. And then the new season would come along, and Ryan may have somebody that has moved to town and wants one of those, and then he can use his discretion to get somebody new a mooring, and the boatyard could rent the remaining 9 if nobody wanted them. Now, I don't know anything about harbors and moorings, and so if it's a terrible idea, I won't take it personally. And I also know that it's it's unprecedented. We currently don't own any moorings as a town, and it may not be something that we want to get into, but it's a way for the town to maintain some sort of flexibility until we get something like a harbor management plan in place, until some of the, there's currently property for sale that could change the nature of the harbor. And so until some of these things sort themselves out, is there any merit in that? Because I think the main concern is that once you give up a mooring, there's a chance, especially somebody like Tennant's Harbor Boatyard that's been around for a long time and is likely going to continue to, that spot is going to be gone for, decades, right? So.
Well, the harbor management plan sounds like it's key to really understanding the capacity of the harbor.
Yeah, it's just that we're a couple
Because
years out from that.
I know. But somehow we gotta get to that as soon as we can. Otherwise, we're making decisions without full knowledge.
Right.
If I'm sure there's an engineering firm somewhere that designs maximum capacity for harbors.
It's the Musson Group.
No,
They're the one doing all the plans.
there's gotta be another choice. You can keep that in a minute. Too.
What does the state say about, does the state dictate to the town that they have to run the mooring business or whatever?
The only thing it starts out as is the homeowners or property on the shore, they got first. And then it goes to commercial fishermen, and then usually towns build the ordinance after that.
Around that, but that's a state.
Yeah.
On page 9, this priority list that
Yep.
lists 1st through 8th, that is the state guidance, I assume.
I don't know if you have any input, Ryan, but as far as liability of the town to assume moorings, that seems like a really slippery.
Well, we had them down at Port Clyde and we got rid of them just for that
Just
reason.
because,
Yeah.
Just for that reason.
There are other towns that do it. We would not be cutting edge to do it by any means. And so I can't imagine that the liability is so great that many other towns would be willing to ignore it. But it certainly adds more, to Ryan's plate that is currently not there.
Is there something for
Yep.
I think accountability is important, right, for one. If we all know we're accountable, that we know where our actions are best used. And I think if the town did have moorings, then it would have to be like the mini boat line. 8-ton rocks that could accommodate anything. Because you can't just say, oh, that one's not used and throw a 46-foot sailboat that actually values at blah, blah, blah. And that mooring was actually gone to the town office. They got it all under control and it was for a 32-foot boat. So even the commercial fishermen are saying, my grandfather had that spot. Yeah, but Grampy had a 28-foot. So why are we able to build a 46-foot with an aluminum stern deck that's huge and still try? And we do to the best of our ability to accommodate this. But eventually you're accountable for what it will hold and the placement in which it's
Space.
for. So to create for this yacht club, when I would expect they have windlass and anchors that could just and then show up, and that would be incredible. And I think we've witnessed it, but I pay pretty good insurance to have liability because sometimes it's a lot on your plate, but if you've gone by what you were told and took all those statistics into placing it, you've done your best. Then it's just communication
and then accountability.
I think it's great outside the box. I think that's what. I think that's what we're trying to have is a discussion of like, what is happening now? What doesn't work for us? We're obviously gonna be speaking for ourselves, and then opening a conversation for you guys. Again, what does the harbor look like? So I mean, I love the outside the box thinking. Does that work? I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it from the boatyard standpoint. But what are other ideas? Is there something else that might work well?
I asked Jeffrey real quick, roughly what does a mooring like that cost? If the town wanted to put them in? 8 ton, that's a prop marine kind of a thing.
You don't wanna give it a try?
That it, you don't wanna do that? I don't know, 10 grand.
12.
Or
12.
12, there you go, baby. Right around that inflation, I forgot. Right, and then. Once it's there, it'd be longer term. 20 years on the bottom portion and then just maintenance costs.
So yes, I guess, our 2 points were cap, discussion around the cap. And then the process by which, the moorings are allocated. And I think one of the other frustrations is, we had an experience with Arts Lobster. Everyone knows Steve Osland, just decided that he was gonna get a mooring. And they've already got 13 and 6 are sunk, not being used. And he just went to Ryan and said, Ryan, we're gonna get this mooring, this extra mooring here. We just bought from somebody, and the answer was, okay. So, I mean, what is the number? How does it work? I guess is our frustration, and part of the aspect around discretion that I'm hoping for a little bit of, guardrails on that is, just to ensure that there's a fair process to that discretion, or it's allocated evenly across all parties.
So just going off on that. When Steve told me that they have 12 moorings now. I told him, and he's got sunken ones, I told him that he's still only allowed 12 moorings. Right. So that's alleviating, as you know, congestions of the mooring. So basically we got rid of a mooring to help with the spacing of boats.
And your rationale in there, right, is that some of the ones that are sunk are so close together that they wouldn't accommodate for more modern boats like 40-foot or something like that.
Yeah, and then less traffic for bringing seaweed in. If you have 6 moorings on the bottom, it's less hazard. They're stuck for now. But are they up for consideration to be raised or moved to another part of the harbor where those can be put back to use, whether for Arts Lobster or future boats? Or they're just being eliminated completely?
Well, they're paying on those.
Right.
They're gonna have 12, be able to put 12 of their fishermen in front of their dock.
Well, so now with the added one, we've been to 13.
Well, no, one's on the shore. Doesn't exist. So all we've done is made that space between your guys' dock and theirs a little less congested as it already is.
Which I will say, appreciate it. It's congested, the harbor's congested at times and spaces, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot to discuss, around the number of 5 and review that within the ordinance. I guess. If the shoe was, yes, we have 15. We have a lot of moorings for the harbor. It's probably the biggest number for a commercial entity within Tennant's Harbor. We are expressing that we are looking to grow. And we'd like to work with all of you on creative ideas or to find other ways that we can expand our offerings. Hopefully working with the town to maybe alleviate the parking issue, the dinghy issue, or these new folks that come to town that want to try it on for a season, or they're seasoned veterans and they know that they really want a mooring and they just want the convenience to come to the boatyard, get in their dinghy, not have to worry about parking and go out and go cruising, whatever it is. You know, I think the harbor management plan that's been logged sounds like a fantastic idea. I know when we spoke with Brandon and Ryan in the meeting, you know, the State of Maine Harbor Masters Association has very clearly stated in like their guideline rules and how to interpret the laws and best ways to move forward. In their like cover statements, like the coast of Maine has 3,500 miles of coastline. 10% of that is usable coastline for harbors, anchorages, mooring sites. So I think my big encouragement would be to try and develop a harbor management plan, knowing that it's that finite, and you guys are all very clear in saying it is a finite resource. I agree with you. How do we all work together? Because inevitably, from the business standpoint, expenses continue to rise. I'm sure there's other folks in the room that have that experience. Expenses never, ever, ever go down. And so we're trying to get creative with how do we either offer more and continue to not keep going to the Bank of Jamie forevermore, and offsetting the losses we have every year. So open to creative thought process, conversations. The door to the boatyard is always open. I don't have all the answers, but I just would like some guidance is really why we're here tonight.
Okay. So it seems to me that we're basically stuck where we started, which is we have an ordinance, and correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like the group is consensus is we continue to stick with what we currently have. There isn't any magic bullet that we can pull out that basically says all of a sudden we can create more capacity. The long range plan, which is the long range plan, is to come up with a harbor management plan. And there really is no short-term solution other than the current ordinance in Ryan's discretion to look at each and every mooring that comes up, consider the case, consider the business case, and make a decision. We're here to help with that, if that is of any benefit to your discretion and what's out there. I think we've heard and recognize that Tennant's Harbor Boatyard is a critical piece to the town. I mean, I think everybody respects what you do. Everybody respects what you offer. I'm a client. And I mean, what you guys provide is great. And it's a great boon for the city or for the town when people come in and are able to moor and spend money in town. There's just so many things to balance here that without a harbor management plan, I don't think that we can make any decisions tonight that are going to change, what the current process is. But I think the sensitivity has been heightened to the fact that it's a problem, and that we need to think through each and every mooring that comes up and think about how we allocate them.
I got a question, for Ryan, I guess, and Brandon. So if like somebody comes to them and wants to sell a mooring and nobody on the list wants it, but they're already over limit, what happens to that mooring?
Just sits there
Just sits there. So,
until I find.
to Brandon's point, instead of putting in new moorings with this group support, the town acquiring those moorings and then leasing them out until somebody wanted to buy it.
I think the worry is the
Liability.
Well, is what?
I think you can kind of go around that in a way if the town didn't own the mooring and the tackle. If the town was leasing that site, maybe,
Right, that's what I mean.
so if
Maybe there's a way to do a little bit of both.
the town was only leasing that site yearly to Tennant's Harbor Boatyard on a yearly basis,
Right.
that if somebody on the waiting list came up and wanted that, then the next year it would revert back to the town's
Right.
ownership of that site, not the tackle.
Right, I mean, regardless of whether we own the tackle or not, that would be a lawyer question probably, but.
That could work for us.
But like-
Something like that, because the tackle, we could then just pull and we still own it. I think that's part of the hitch that I was running up against with Brandon is it's expensive, tackle. And so who maintains that? But if we're leasing just the ground, just the bottom, then we own the tackle, we can pull that. You know, if it reverts back to the town to a new resident or something, you know, I see some solution.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I can see, we don't wanna up the limit, I get that. But also I see their frustration if they wanna run a business and there's moorings sitting there doing nothing. And nobody wants it. But I don't necessarily think that, you know, we need to change the ordinance, but if the town could acquire that bottom. You know, I mean, if it's for sale, then the town could maybe have a fund for that. And then the town could lease to people like them, or if fishermen just starting out and they can't buy one, or. I'm just wondering if this group would be open to something like that.
Can the town actually buy bottom?
I don't know, we'd have to ask them. Well, it's already owned by somebody, so I don't see why not.
No, the bottom, not that mooring, no.
Yeah, because the town already has the rights to
The spot itself
the
is
spot.
to say, so. I mean, you can own a mooring site even if there isn't a rock there, right?
Right, technically, yeah.
So.
I guess in theory, we're kind of leasing it now, the town.
You are, yeah.
Yeah.
You are, but-
And what we're discretion part as well is like if that mooring space that we wanna put 15 we have. Ryan decides that it's in the way for some reason or another, we can have us move it, we lose that, and then we're not paying anything more. So the town, my understanding is the town controls the bottom of the harbor.
Yeah.
And the spaces, right? So, like, we're all, as mooring owners, permit holders, we're just paying a lease fee to the town. And so we're done. Leasing it from the town, it goes back into
The difference that Brian is suggesting is that once you have that lease, you can just automatically renew it. And so I think what Brian is suggesting that is
Like
For-
a yearly.
people,
Right.
once you're over the cap,
Right.
and we're not talking about going backwards, you know, so your 16th mooring would then not have an automatic renewal.
Right, there'd be a yearly lease from the town. And if somebody wanted to come up and buy it, then that would have to be considered. Instead of the town putting in new moorings to do something like that, you know.
How often does that happen, right? You get to the bottom of the list, have.
So I'm starting on one right now. Two in, he's gonna look at it and go out and actually look to see where it is and make a decision, then I keep on working down the list, so.
One a year,
Couple
Yeah.
times a year.
couple times a year.
So a follow-up question, I mean, so we know that we're over the ordinance limit of 5. And I think everybody understands that we are looking to acquire more moorings. Like, we're still on the wait list. Does it make sense for us to stay on the wait list? How does, like, we're paying a fee to be on a wait list, but we know we're over the limit. You know, is there, like, does that fall under? Obviously, I think it falls under the discretion of Ryan. Because if we're paying to be on a wait list, but the answer is gonna be no because we're over 5. I'm gonna stop spending money to be on the wait list, but yet we've had enough conversations with Brandon and Ryan, you guys both know that. If there was a mooring that became available, we are highly interested. So, you know, should I stay on this wait list? We're on it for 2 years.
Yeah.
here. So we'll go through this year, but then is there a wait list for? Maybe what the suggestion is here about leasing it to us, but do we end up buying the tackle if we pull the tackle?
Yeah.
Like, so we would purchase the tackle and lease the bottom space from the town. Pay the yearly permit fee and then find a cutoff date in there. Or an annual renewal date. And that gives the opportunity for it to be recycled into maybe future residents or commercial entities.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the point in leaving them sitting there unwanted if there are people that could use them, especially if the town's willing to own them. If the town's not willing to own them, then, you know,
The
but
problem we're gonna run into, as I can just see, is using Susan Kreiner, for example. I had a buyer all lined up, but they wanted the $3,000. You could put a new one in for like 2. And so she had a chance to sell it, but she wanted top dollar.
she's still paying her annual fee, right?
Right.
So it's not.
So I think that's where you're gonna run into the problem is people already got the tackle there. They're gonna want their money. So is the town gonna,
But that's a different beach than.
Buy that.
That's a paid for mooring.
yeah, no, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so what he's saying, Ryan, is that in this,
I know his is totally different. But for that spot to come available, that person that has his tackle or theirs, hers, or what has it there now, they're gonna want money for that.
right, and so in the Kreiner example, nobody wants it. The Tenants Harbor Boatyard would buy the tackle.
Right.
The site itself would be on an annual renewal, so there would be no automatic, guarantee that spot, you would retain the spot next year. So that, I think that would be
Yeah.
the difference.
Yeah.
And then they know that, okay, we lost the spot, we'll haul the tackle out.
Right,
Somebody
so
else.
any new person who comes on the list, I would presume Ryan would say, well, the next person on the list, we actually have one available. You're number 16 on the list, we have one available, it's this spot would come due in January. We can look at it, you can have it if you want, if not, next year, we would get it again or something. to that
Right,
effect.
and at which point you could either sell the tackle to the new person
Right.
or haul it out and they could put their own in.
Right,
Well, exactly, and a question to the Ryan side there, where it's the Criners are stuck. Cause they don't need their mooring anymore, but they want top dollar for it. Does that fall under discretion for you to have them remove that, because that's an available space for someone else who can go buy new tackle for 2,000 and use that space? So we're utilizing all the resources in the harbor, if they don't wanna sell it for whatever they want for. At what point was that kind of like, do we move on and say, oh, somebody on the list does want that spot, but they don't want your tackle, so since you're willing to give it up, then you gotta move your tackle. Because if a new mooring is cheaper than what everybody's asking. I'm guessing that falls under discretion.
I speak and, um. Seems as though if it hadn't been maintained, and it's not even safe, it's not fit to be used. And if it's a personal client who hasn't paid for a rental to begin with, it doesn't take the liability risk. Then that's something the town needs to know, so. So if there's an annual inspection and it says, okay, it's good to go, and I perhaps spend the money to insure it or the seed, then at least in my heart, I know. I thought it was good, unless someone else says something different, then you have to go by their word. So a client who hadn't used it for a few years, then just stops maintaining, then there's the risk again. So this is a hard one, because I think we all know that next step. But I think there are several in the harbor. I think my stepfather might have 2 on paper that he pays for that don't exist. So you wonder, like, gosh, how many people have been paying to keep their spot, but they've lost it a long time. And I'm not trying to ruffle feathers, it's just, again, communication is important. And so the inner harbor is like gold, and then we start working out. It's still important because each of us has put time and effort into understanding each placement. And then, right, sure, if there's a marina that can zip people back and forth shuttle, perhaps that could. I think traditionally it was like, okay, if you have a boat here and there's a storm that goes over here. So if you plaster it and there is a storm, where do they go? So that's a question, not a statement, or rhetorical, if you will.
So if we come back to some sort of annual. Right, so that's what we're talking about here, is on a onesies and a twosies basis. If something comes available, the town would take possession of the mooring. Would you buy that? So let's just, somebody
would the town buy the mooring?
No, it doesn't sound like it, we would find someone to buy the tackle itself. But their lease of the site would be on an annual basis without an automatic renewal.
So something comes up, tenants, Harbor Boatyard says, we'll give you the $3,000 or we'll put the tackle on. Then they have an annual lease for that spot.
Right, and so say somebody wants a spot, they'd be willing to take that one. And it's Harbor Boatyard would either sell them the tackle or haul it out.
And Ryan, you said those come up once or twice a year. And so Tenants Harbor Boatyard, is that growth good? If you just required one or two a year?
Any amount, that's
Yep.
great, yeah, that's what I was in this, yeah.
And so I think where the ordinance may need to change if you were going to go down that route, unless you just wanted to call that discretion, but we could have it still written up somewhere as a sort of guiding policy for harbor master when using discretion. Would be that there should probably be a secondary wait list for folks that are already over their cap. And that fee might not make sense to be the same as the original wait list because you know that you're likely not getting one. And then the other piece is adding in the disclaimer that the site lease does not automatically renew.
That's an annual lease.
Right, and it would go back to the priority list that's already identified in the ordinance.
So that, in that circumstance, then it preserves the capacity issue, because if all of a sudden you get flooded with people who are coming in, you may have gotten, make it up, you may have gotten 3 moorings over 3 years and all of a sudden 3 people want spots. And the discretion is, sorry, those go back in the pool. Or 2 go back in the pool, and this year you have 1 that you can rent. That is a bridge strategy to a harbor plan.
Right.
Where we make decisions as a town about whether or not we want to own moorings. The mapping, the work that goes around trying to figure out expansion and those types of things. But if we want to preserve the ordinance, keep the discretion and find some way to do an annual small amount of growth for commercial entities, it seems like a viable solution. If people are content with that.
And I think we'd still have to look into the legal aspect of liabilities and, and then I don't think it's a quick fix. It is a bridge strategy to get to eventually where we're going to need to go, but I don't think it's a quick bridge either.
Yeah, I'd want to know if I, came to town and hung off that mooring and something happened, who then is responsible? Is it the leaseholder? Is it the town?
It wouldn't,
That's the point, I think.
it wouldn't be the town.
It wouldn't be the
Still
town.
own the tackle.
Yeah, we wouldn't have
own
any
the
tackle.
Yeah.
It falls directly back on us,
Yeah.
because we have a lease agreement similar, I would think,
With
like
any-
it's.
Then it would be the same as every other rental mooring you have.
Other rental
because
ones, yeah,
instead of
and
a
also
yearly.
to the point of like the town owns the bottom and we all lease space from you anyways.
Right.
And it's our tackle, like whether it's Tenants Harbor Boatyard or a commercial entity like fishermen or another recreational vessel, they own the tackle. But we're still paying a fee to the town to be able to use that space, so I think that's us, that would completely fall to us.
Right, it would really just be that the site lease does not, for any organization that's already over the cap. Any new moorings, the site lease would not automatically renew. If they were interested, it would have to be opened up to the public in the waiting list.
Well, basically that site would always remain on the wait list,
Right.
Right. It will not be available immediately.
Yeah.
Something.
or however you want to write it on the calendar year or not, but it would always be on the wait list. It just would be, have a tenant on it for a specified period of time.
Right, and it's certainly not an
Or when the
ideal.
moorings become available or somebody wants it, they're gonna get more or less a brand new mooring from us. Because if we're owning the tackle, we're maintaining it, right? Like we're refreshing the tackle that's in the harbor as it goes. So I mean, if this is a viable solution, there's probably gonna be fewer and fewer sunk or derelict or abandoned moorings, right? By allowing us to buy the tackle, we are going to make sure the tackle is as new as it can be every single season that we have that mooring.
until it goes back into the waitlist pool. So there is a benefit in that regard too. Is that people know what they're getting when they purchase. They're not gonna spend $3,000 on an old Volkswagen with a bottle of stuff.
Well, if it did come up, somebody wanted that ball, would you sell the tackle or would you pull it and you'd have to provide any?
So yeah, that's something that would be up for
Case by
discussion.
case.
I think that would have to, yeah, that would all have to be ironed out in whatever the lease was, you know,
Right.
if you choose to put it there, does it stay there? Because then that could also fall back on the town, or if you choose to put it there, that's great. But if it comes up, it has to be removed by, you know, X date. Or the new owner could contract with you the same way they could contract with Jeff to purchase that gear and put it on their mooring that they've now bought that site from the town. But it shouldn't have anything to do with the town.
Yeah.
Or, you know, having that tackle.
Yeah, I think to me, it starts to sound to make sense, right? Like there's tackle existing in the space for a spot that's basically brand new, right? Like we bought the tackle from whatever entity it came from, in whatever condition it was, and we renewed it. And we got to use it for the year. And we would be ultimately, I think, selling it back for fair market value, whatever we paid for it, to the new owner if they wanted that tackle. Otherwise, maybe what we're responsible for moving it out of the way so they can drop their own. And now if another one becomes available, we can take our new gear and put it in another space if there's another annual lease that presents itself that nobody wants. I think the recycle works.
It's a good discussion to have.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's a discussion we can have, but I think we also need to sit down and look a lot more at what is, you know, what is out there right now, what theoretically could be available.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, how many of these warrants, Ryan, are in that classification where they're being paid for but not being used?
I wouldn't, I guess, even a number.
Well, if they're being paid for, they're not really up the grab.
It wouldn't,
Yeah,
it wouldn't
that
be.
doesn't really matter.
So how many spots are there, or do you even have a number, spots that are there that are abandoned?
None.
Well,
So-
I just mean like, say if Scott wants to sell his mooring to them, but they can't because they're over limit, so the town takes it on, leases it. Cause he's gonna stop paying for it, so it's gonna be a derelict.
No,
Until
it's a
that-
little different, right?
Yeah.
So the town, in what's being proposed, the town's never gonna purchase any tackle.
Right.
And so if we use the Kreiner mooring as an example, if nobody wants to buy the Kreiner mooring for that price, but they're willing to put their own mooring, get their own tackle and put it on that spot, then they could sell the tackle to the boatyard because that part doesn't matter. The town is really only leasing they're facilitating the sale of the tackle, but only leasing the site.
But if they don't wanna sell it, but they keep paying their fee.
Then it-
Well, they're allowed to do
we're not
that.
gonna boot 'em out.
And it's an active mooring and there's
Yeah.
nothing we can say about that.
And I don't think the question is abandoned moorings, but there was a question about how many more moorings could the harbor actually hold to get us essentially at capacity? And those moorings then could enter into this type of arrangement where, if nobody wanted them, then they could go up on, we could lease the site annually to folks that were over.
Where does capacity come in here? Right?
Yeah.
Where do you stop in line for what's the harbor, what's the capacity?
It's typically, Brian's been using the line from Mouse Island, and so I think what Brian has said is that marking that as the edge of the harbor, there's probably room for 10 to 15 more moorings. But he's been hesitant to place them for folks that are already over the cap, because there is still some uncertainty about what the need and demand of the harbor will be.
If you're, they're over the cap. Okay, well, my general store is over the cap. Okay, so you already got these guys that were over the cap and they're looking for more, okay? Joe Blow comes in, let's just say. Bird's Place starts up again, I don't know what they got left for more, I have no idea, okay, but. Ordinance says 5. They want, they want to come in, they say, well, 10,000 boatyard's got 15, Port Clyde's got 17, how come we're only about 5? you're into a heated battle because these guys got this, that guy's got that, but we supposed to only have 5.
Miller's got 10, Art's got 12.
But unless it's-
Super over the limit.
Well, I not being a lawyer at all, but I think that's more of a legal issue is where's the liability on the town to say like, well, yes, you're grandfathered, but when were those moorings grandfathered? Where do we draw the line and say 5 is 5 until we come up with a plan? We're not gonna increase anymore whatsoever because we're only digging ourselves deeper into this hole.
I don't have a problem if, be honest with you, having them, if there's a space out there and they wanna lease that space and it stays available to the town, per se.
Yeah.
And Joe Blow comes in and says, I want that mooring, they sell that mooring to them and then it's out of their hands. They take care of the tack. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm seeing issues with. I'm seeing issues with, you got an ordinance in here and it's already half blown out of the water and they wanna add more. So what's the point of having the ordinance? It's just shit. I went, so have 100 moorings.
Yeah.
It's.
Well, this would have, if you did that, went into this new lease in the space area, it would effectively stop people from ever owning more than 5 in the future.
Yeah,
Because
most
they
of those we
can
do
just
are there because our ordinance left a lot of room for discretion.
Well, to a point about not being a lawyer either, though, if by leaving 5 as the number in the ordinance, right? If somebody does come in and is saying, well, there's 17 here and there's 12 over here and there's 6 over there. And an individual pushes a hard amount, does that then revert, all these moorings have to come back? Because there was a legal decision that was made down the road that your ordinance says 5, but you allowed all these extras for all these entities. So 5 is.
That would be pretty unprecedented, not
Yeah,
even
that's
here
right.
in town.
There are many.
Because the ordinance does allow in excess of 5.
It allows for discretion, so.
And I think this all goes back to, I hate to be the strategic big picture thing, but it all goes back to the harbor management plan. Because it will answer those questions about the legalities and it'll answer how many can you fit in there comfortably, and then the town makes a decision about what they want to do in terms of space and growth. It's this short term between now and then that we really need to deal with. And
Well, that's why it's probably best to keep it the way it is.
Yeah.
yes, I think where we've landed, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think where we've landed is we have the out there harbor management plan that needs to get started at some point, and this committee needs to help with that work. The ordinance stays where it is. We obviously can't change that now anyway, but the short-term solution is this leasing arrangement that if a mooring comes up and available, then Ryan can offer that. If no one else wants it, the town leases the space and we'll come up with some kind of an annual strategy where that's available. The owner owns the tackle, and that is, it's an annual lease. If someone else wants that mooring on the list at some point in time, then that person has to forfeit that lease that year, and it goes back to Ryan's discretion.
From our standpoint, that sounds like a great solution. I think we could get behind that. That's a great bridge. I also do just want to acknowledge, I love this discussion. Thank you all for hearing us and having some back and forth. I think this is democracy. This is great. I love it. So.
One question before, while we're thinking of this, not that the finances of the boatyard is really a consideration of this committee, I don't think, but the boatyard should also think, how much do you want to invest in tackle that theoretically next year could just be sitting on the bank somewhere? Is that worth the $10,000 every mooring? That next year, all of a sudden Ryan says, well, those 3 moorings, we had 3 people move in and they wanted those and you guys don't have them anymore. Now you've got $30,000 worth of tackle that the people didn't necessarily want to buy.
I think to that point, I think actually I think the town would see us as a good entity from that standpoint, because if let's just say the 5 moorings outside of Mouse Island and 5 mooring spaces that are not being used right now, Tenants Harbor invests, however much money and drops five rocks there and, it's gonna be all brand new stuff. Next year, somebody comes in and wants one of those spaces, we'd be happy to, break even. And sell them that brand new tackle for that space. They're not gonna get a better deal, really. I mean, like what, they're not gonna want that space, without the tackle, I guess. So, I mean, I think we would help develop, it's almost a, subsidized development of that area.
Yeah, I don't see much of a loss in that either.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so if we purchase the tackle and we can sell it back for what we purchased.
Yeah.
But you're offering something that a lot of other people can't. You're offering parking, access to the water and.
Well, right, exactly. I mean, so if those spaces are available and we can have an annual lease, but I think to the point was like the concern about like talking about from a business standpoint, like we invest $30,000 in moorings. And then for 5 years, we're sitting on it. But I think our hope would, I think what I'm hearing from Brendan, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that by investing that 30,000, ultimately it's gonna be going to a new owner of that mooring, right? And so they have new ground tackle, we recoup our costs, we made a little bit of money from renting the moorings for the season. And so we're actually still coming out ahead, right? We've invested in the new tackle, hopefully good for the new owner.
The town is going,
The town
people
gets
are coming to the town.
But from what I'm understanding, everybody's idea is that if the person who got that mooring and they decided they didn't want your tackle on it, your tackle has to come out of the water. It can't get shifted somewhere else. There's no open spot for it. So that tackle would have to come out of the water because all of a sudden that person could have had a mooring of their own. They could decide to do something different. So there would have to be that kind of agreement, I think.
Yeah, that's our chance to take, but what you're banking on is like, that's, if there are 5 mooring spaces, one might, not want new tackle.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're not talking about creating any new mooring sites. I mean, no, so theoretically, right now, we're only addressing a hypothetical situation because are there any moorings?
Other than the
It's
grinders.
fine.
So,
Yeah, this is,
Well,
this is creeping toward a solution.
yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like we have a solution for already existing moorings. If we were to enter this annual lease of the site that doesn't automatically renew, so essentially it stays on the waiting list, but can be leased out on an annual basis so that we don't have just empty moorings that could be used. I do think though, what you're projecting is accurate. My guess is that our next meeting with you all would be like, well, why don't we drop 5 new moorings in here? There's space for it. We'll do the tackle and we'll know that it's on an annual basis. So that conversation maybe doesn't have to happen tonight, but I imagine would be happening soon.
Right, could create some response.
If there's, I mean, yeah, if there's an allowable space out there, that's not inhibiting other commercial entities, if there's room in the harbor. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I mean, that again, that goes at the back to Ryan's discussion, if there's room in the harbor for 5 more rocks and maybe future spaces for new residents, new entities.
Well, let's say Brett's place gets sold and it turns into a private resident, which is a good chance of it, I would think.
You're not buying it?
No, I'm with you. So, that person is gonna be first on the list to have the moorings for right in front.
Yes.
Or more perhaps, right?
Floats, put out as there's a lot into it, but yeah.
So, Brian, you indicated to us that's not the case. The
What?
moorings don't go with the business. That's what you called up.
Yeah,
Our slot-
moorings don't transfer with real estate. I think what he's referring to is that if it's now a private residence, that's what is deemed first on the priority list by the state.
Right.
So when they get on the waiting list, they would be first on it.
For more.
For one.
Yeah.
For one.
Right,
One.
right.
And what happens to the other 5? 4?
They would stay on this arrangement that we've been discussing tonight where, Tenants Harbor Boatyard likely, or anyone else owns the tackle. The lease site is annual with the site remaining on the waiting list and it goes like that until we have a harbor management plan.
So are we talking about putting a cap on the mornings we have right now, not creating any new spots?
Well, right now we have welded spots. If somebody new came in and wanted to buy one, you've got spots that you can set and then we'd put them on. So
Where are these available spots?
Be right in front of birds, basically.
Right in front of where?
Birds. With them. That's the only spots that are really left.
Yeah, well, I don't know what Bert has left there because, like Alan pulled his out of there and that, so I don't even left there now.
I think we're talking empty spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, no tackle,
Potential, yeah.
just where there's room
Next to
the moorings.
Is the Haberman plotted out? It was at one time, right? It wasn't.
Just other than what I've collected on GPS.
So we really don't have like the comprehensive idea.
We don't know how many spots there are. I mean, you have so many 50-foot spots and
Yeah.
many 20-foot spots.
That's the big next step.
That's,
That would be a result of the harbor management plan.
Right.
yeah,
But I definitely wouldn't recommend maxing out whatever he thinks we have left.
yeah.
I don't see the harm in adding a few spots.
The only thing I would say about that is that's a slippery slope to add a few. Because then somebody else and they want a few, and then all of a sudden, well, you did it for them, so we gotta do it here.
Well,
And,
I would have to come up with a number, I guess.
well, and so I think we need to maybe address those issues first. Do we keep it where it's at right now and move forward with just. If one comes available that nobody wants, we can lease it for 1 year. Instead of, ingesting what we don't know is available.
I think this short-term strategy was a onesie and a twosie and not adding anything new at the moment until we do more thinking and work about what the harbor management plan will be. But as moorings come available, I think this strategy of leasing on an annual basis is, if people can get behind that, then that's, I think, a recommendation to the select board of.
Well, the town's doing it now. We're leasing out spaces, collecting the money and leasing out spaces,
Yeah.
but you're responsible for your equipment.
So the
Whether it be a
question,
boat or your mooring or whatever.
question is, what do we need to do to make this happen?
What I would recommend doing is writing up a sort of guiding policy for how to manage sites that are over, or businesses, individuals that are over their cap. And it would outline this main difference, that the lease of the site is not held in perpetuity as long as you stay up on your fees. It would revert to the waiting list and the general public at the beginning of every new season.
For a certain time period.
Yeah, and so, May 1st or May 14th comes and goes. And then Ryan could say, look, it doesn't appear that anybody wants this. Do you guys want to lease it again? So that we don't have, empty moorings that could be used just sitting there.
So it's a policy to supplement the ordinance that gives guidance to the discretion.
Yeah.
Right.
And this policy both covers commercial and private entities.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Would also come with a secondary waiting list then.
Who wants to do that?
We will do that in-house and bring it back for the committee to review and either sign off on or make some edits and changes to. Ryan and I will sit down and try and draft that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? People wanna?
No, thank you guys. Really appreciate your time.
I'm right there, and thank you all for.
Not sure we solved anything, but
Well, no.
got everybody thinking.
Some forward momentum.
Some constructive.
Yeah, I think it's some constructive, so,
They were.
yeah, thank you all.
Well, we appreciate the question, because this is it's gonna keep happening.
What prevents somebody from, like, has happened in the past, what prevents, right now, what prevents somebody from? Does have a boat, yeah, they own so many more. how they.
Joe Blow starts another company, he owns so many farms, and rent them out. Is there anything controlling that at all now?
Hang on one second, you guys?
And the car, they just put the buoy on it, we ended up at 10, we only tell the vet. We only tell that number at 5.
I need a gavel. Give me a gavel.
So it's all old and depth, right?
Firecrackers.
I think Phil's trying to get your attention. Another question.
Go ahead, Ben.
What's preventing, like in the past, what's happened, whether it be in Port Clyde or Tennis Harbor, what's preventing any, let's say, Ben Norton LLC wants to own 5 moorings.
You would be allowed to.
Yeah.
You
And
would-
I'd be allowed to, and I could rent them out or do whatever, I could lease them out to them or whatever wants to be done. There's nothing, that's still the same as it always was.
Yeah.
So Ben Norton LLC would be higher priority on the list to get 5 more moorings on
Right.
the available list. Who then would be taking them away from Tennant's Harbor Boatyard.
First 5.
First 5.
Yeah.
Right, cause that's the process.
Right, so that's,
There's a tier. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way it goes. So
Yeah,
we're-
it's always,
okay.
and it's always been that way. I mean, that's a lot of people have utilized that.
If we lease spaces. Theoretically, in the future, nobody would ever own 1.5 that doesn't already. Because.
Correct.
They wouldn't need to, they'd lease them as needed.
Correct, unless for whatever reason, the harbor management plan revealed that. If we reset all of the moorings in the harbor, you could open up another 25 spaces, and then therefore they recommend that you change and these are all hypothetical, but then you change the cap to 10, and then all of a sudden a business could own 10. That's unlikely, but those are the types of things that could come out of that.
There's a benefit there though too, long range wise, like Tennant's Harbor Boatyard probably won't be there forever, hopefully it is, but like 50 years down the road, like as waterfront entities change hands, right? Corporations change, businesses change. And the moorings don't always go with the businesses.
Right.
So it recycles them back into what's available and caps everybody at 5 and then leases from there. The projection out in the future.
Right, yeah, the boatyard was sold. The new business would like to be able to get up to their 5, and then now you would have 10 other open moorings in the harbor.
That come back into the pool.
And the new business could, by our current solution, lease the sites on an annual basis. Maintain some flexibility for the harbor.
From our perspective, what I guess is there's a consensus here, but it's saying that we're at our cap, we will probably never get any more license, they're not annual ones.
And unless the harbor management plan reveals,
Other options.
other opportunities.
I would say tonight. But I think those types of questions, I mean, I don't know anything about a harbor management plan, but I'm imagining that it's strategic planning about where does the town want to be in 10 years? Is it going to be more recreational? Is it going to be more commercial? What's happening with the commercial industry? And so that may change in the future, but I think we couldn't make those decisions without that being informed by some person plan who would know how to look at that.
Does the East Wind own any moorings?
Yeah, yeah. Got 2 or 3 off the front of the door.
Yep. And I mean, I recognize that it's not an ideal business solution for the boatyard, but I think meets the goals of both parties. It allows you some, albeit limited, opportunity for growth and allows the town to maintain some flexibility in its harbor until we have a bit more clarity on its long-term future.
Well, I think that we should support a business, whether it be a boatyard, an inn, a lobster buying wharf, whatever. The town needs to support.
I would say that is firmly the stance of the town.
Yep.
But I think that's why it's number 1 on your. Riparian, commercial, just. It's like first option for.
First is riparian, second is commercial,
Right.
third is recreational or commercial.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I think we have a We have a strategy going forward. We'll get a document. You guys have that together. We'll call a meeting and review that. Barring anything else that people have to add, I think it was a great meeting. We appreciate you guys coming. Yeah. Thank you very much. And it's a good conversation and it's the kind of thing that's gonna kick us down the road to get harbor management.
Still needs to be.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.